He had his gun, so he just swung it open.
I start to notice that, the atmosphere feels a little bit weird.
First thing he seen was this 6.5 foot tall, broad shoulder, dark hair. That freaked him out.
We hadn't talked to her about like life and death and what any of that means. She's 3 years old,
So we turned around. Suddenly there's a whole tree falling across the road.
And she was describing to us that, there was a deceased person that she could see visually.
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, where we tackle the ever-expanding history and mystery of monsters and supernatural madness every Monday. You can find us at CryptidClues.ca for more information, or even check out exclusive content and support us at patreon.com/CryptidClues.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Cryptid Clues. Now, we have a very special guest for today's episode. Please welcome Sheldon from the Nicola Valley Bigfoot Podcast. He's going to go into detail about the upcoming Bigfoot conference in Merritt. So without further ado, let's get into this.
Hi guys, my name is Sheldon Quewezance. I am currently living in Merritt, British Columbia, which is going to be the site of the first annual 2023 Nicola Valley Bigfoot Conference, which is a play on words from my podcast, the Nicola Valley Bigfoot Podcast. Thank you guys for having me on. I do appreciate it. It's been a hectic week. We'll put it lightly.
Hey, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Sheldon. We super appreciate you making the time for us. And for any new listeners as well, I'm Reuben. I'm one of the hosts of Cryptid Clues, and I am joined by my co-host Taylor as we do this little interview here. Taylor, I'll let you say a few words and we'll pass it back to Sheldon.
Yeah, again, Sheldon, thank you so much for being here. I was caught off guard because I was just bombarding with questions. And then when you agreed to want to come on the show and you made that offer, I was like, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. I can't imagine how busy your schedule is trying to coordinate this. Because you said it's the first conference that's taking place. And I've never had the opportunity to really at least witness anything like this in British Columbia before or anything close. So go by all means, tell us all about it.
Well, I guess I should say for just right off the bat, I've been saying that there hasn't been a Bigfoot conference in the interior of BC for a couple of weeks now, and apparently there have been. They've been on a really small scale, more or less get-togethers and just very small gatherings of people that are into the Sasquatch as well. So this is going to be a little bit different than that. This is actually going to be one of those big conferences that you see posted on Facebook or advertised in these other groups or other parts of the country. Yeah, I wanted to do this because, well, honestly, I wasn't expecting to do this, but I wanted to do this because I really want to bring people together. Not only promote my own brand of my podcast, but I wanted to bring the people that I've been speaking to together and allow everyone just to kind of share their own experiences with each other and without feeling any kind of judgment towards them. That was the main issue, the main reason I wanted to do this conference is to give you guys a quick rundown. There's a stigma, and I'm sure you guys are quite well aware of it. If you believe in something that's not mainstream, then you're a crazy person. And what I have found over the past 2 years that I've been doing my podcast is that people from every walk of life who have come to me and told me about their experience with either a Sasquatch or a dogman or whatever else they come across in the woods. Orbs is another big one. A lot of the times people don't want to talk about it on my podcast. They don't come to me to say, hey, I want to come on your show and tell my story. No, it's quite the opposite. It's they just want to talk to somebody that's not going to judge them and not going to assume that they're crazy. Someone that's actually going to listen to them. And I get an email probably once or twice a week, just from people not wanting to not even wanting a response from me. They just want to talk to or tell somebody. And I thought, that's quite a shame. There's still that stigma in this day and age. It's 2023, and we're supposed to be an open-minded society nowadays. But yet, if you say you saw a furry man walking through the woods, then you're nuts. And so the idea behind the podcast and as well as the conference is I want to bring people together and to say that, it's okay if you've had an experience and it's okay to talk about it. So my whole reasoning for the conference is we're going to bring those people together. I'm bringing some researchers and experts in the field to present their evidence and their ideology on Sasquatch, and we're just going to let everybody have a group session, so to speak, and that's kind of where the conference is, and then that's the reasoning behind it.
I love that. That really makes it feel personal. And you mentioned there that a lot of people feel that stigma, and I think that's probably the driving factor behind the ideas of these conferences and stuff, is to make it more open. Because if people lose the stigma, there's probably so many encounters and reports and stuff that people are just afraid to talk about.
Yeah, I did a radio interview yesterday. I'm sorry, it's been a whirlwind. My email's been going nuts ever since I announced this thing. But I did a radio interview yesterday, and one of the hosts was quite adamant that Sasquatch encounters are very, very few and far between, and no, that's not the case at all. They're actually a lot more common than people think, and people just don't want to talk about it because they don't want that label attached to them anymore, or they don't want that label attached to them at all, and so they keep it very close to play their cards very close to the chest, or they just don't say anything. And I find that to be very disheartening. When I started my podcast, I really wanted to focus just on British Columbia, because I don't think British Columbia quite gets enough coverage, we'll say, when it comes to Sasquatch and the people who have encounters with them. And I had the darndest time finding people that come on my show from British Columbia. I had to expand it to basically everywhere in North America, because people in BC, if you're either you believe in it or you don't. And the people who do believe in it, there's a very small number of people who are willing to talk about it. Very, very small. And I still don't quite comprehend why that's the way it is, but that's how it is. So I'm thinking that, if we take a few steps in the opposite direction and we can, show people that, it's fine if you've had a run-in with one of these creatures. I have family members who have seen these things and do not want to talk about it. They don't even want me saying their name or mentioning that they have seen one. So the stigma still exists, and I'm just trying to do my part to kind of get rid of that.
There's an interesting, I guess, notion attached to that, where you think you would be, I have not had an experience, but to be so terrified to see something that you've been brought up your whole life thinking should not exist, that is truly terrifying. But then the counter to that is you're more afraid of going out into the public and talking about it. And it's a shame that is the more terrifying of the two situations.
I never thought of it that way, but yeah, that's true. Very true. There's the other flip side of that too. I mean, the First Nations people here in British Columbia, bless them. They welcome me into their territory and have allowed me to speak on part of their culture, because Sasquatch is very ingrained in the belief system within the First Nations people here. Actually, all over Canada and in the U.S. for that matter. But Sasquatch is a very sacred being to the First Nations, and there are certain things that I'm not allowed to talk about, and I won't. But there's certain things that they won't talk about, just because they're that's how regarded they are. They're held in very, very high regard, and to speak about who they are, what they are, the beings that they represent would be kind of disrespectful. So that's another obstacle. I shouldn't say obstacle, but it's another factor to take into this whole equation of why people do not want to talk about Sasquatch. And I'm just trying to loosen, give it a little push in the opposite direction. The more I think the more people talk about it, the easier it'll become once the day comes where these beings are acknowledged as a living, breathing society, which I do believe that day is coming, whether it be within my lifetime, possibly.
I would hope it's in our lifetime. I'd be super excited to find this kind of thing be normalized and for people to talk about it and be accepting of Bigfoot and all that stuff. if there's other cryptids out there, we could start going down those paths too. Life would be so much more exciting.
Well, dogmen are another thing altogether. I don't know if you guys have ever covered dogmen in your show before. Yeah, those are something I don't want to come across. But Sasquatch, when I had my sighting, it was quite more of a confusing situation than anything. But if I came across a dogman, that would be absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. So maybe some cryptids here are better off left alone.
Yeah, I know you've talked about your sighting before in the past, but for new listeners to our show that might be wanting to segue over to yours after, do you mind giving us a quick summary of your experience?
Oh, sure. Let's see. Where do I start? Because I always start right from when I was a kid. But it just happened that me and my two best friends, we started a research group, and we would go out on days off. We all work at a mine, so we all have weird schedules. And on our days off, we'd go to the woods and we'd look for clues, we'd look for prints, and we'd look for tree structures or whatever else we could find. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Walking around in the woods at night is a very scary yet thrilling feeling. I'm not sure if I'm using the word properly, but one day my brother, who happens to be an RCMP member, and he's stationed way up in northern British Columbia, he came down here and he was visiting. And so he stopped by my house and he was pestering me like, hey, let's go squatching. Let's go squatching. I want to see what you guys do. And I really didn't want to go. I really wasn't in the mood. It was kind of a windy night and it was just kind of chilly. And I'm like, well, no, I don't really feel like it. But, he drove 10 hours to come down just to hang out with me. So I thought, okay, you know what? We can do this. I'll give my buddy Dusty a call. And I said, hey, what are you doing? Let's go head out for a little bit. And so him and his wife and me and my brother, we set out to go see what we can find. And it was a very typical night. 99.9% of the times you go out into the woods to look for Sasquatch clues, you don't see or find anything. You don't hear anything. It's just a write-off, so to speak. And that's what I thought. That's where I thought that night was going. We did a little bit of a forest walk and there was no clues. It was kind of windy still. And, it doesn't help with, you can't hear howls or whoops or anything back or tree knocks. And so I suggested, let's go sit in the truck. We'll wait till the wind dies down a little more and then we'll kind of reevaluate at this point. And, it was about 11:30 at night. And, we were sitting in the truck. We're kind of just contemplating what's our next move. And we're actually going to leave. And, I started scanning the forest with the flashlight I have. I have one of those telescopic lights, you can push the lens forward and backwards and it'll focus the light where you want it to.
Those things are so cool.
Yeah. And so I was just kind of scanning the tree line that was off to the east of us. And I caught a glimpse of something. And I brought my flashlight up and I kind of focused it more on where it was. And there were these eyes. And these eyes were like amber yellow, almost like a traffic light, but just a little bit different. And I was like, what the heck is that? So I focused my flashlight in closer, and there was this face that, even though my light was on it, it was black. Like it was black, like ink. And it just seemed the light just kind of didn't bounce off of it. It almost like it absorbed it. And it was a really, really weird thing. And my flashlight was, focused enough that I could see he was poking its head from behind a tree and like that. And he had his hand wrapped around the tree kind of for balance. And I could make out his fingers, but the one thing that really stuck out to me other than his eyes was how big his hand was. Like you could see the power in a hand, just from him. I'm assuming it was a man. Mm-hmm. Just from how his hand was positioned and how it was gripping that tree, you could see power. And I don't know how else to explain it, but that's how it was. And my brain started going like overload. And I started kind of shaking, and I was like I told everybody, hey, look. And so, my buddy Dusty was sitting in the front with his wife, and they could see it. And they're kind of like, they're kind of jaw dropping. And my brother, who was in the back seat with me off to the side of me there, the way he was positioned, it was hard for him to see because he was trying to look past my buddy's wife there, and he couldn't really see it, but he was like doing this, and then he finally caught a little glimpse of it, and he started freaking out. Like I still tease him about this to this day. But he carries a gun for a living. He should have nerves of steel, you know. But anyway, so he started freaking out, and he started kind of losing his mind, and he's like, "What is that? Tell me what the F that is. What do you guys see? You tell me what that is." And then, like, I'm staring at this thing, and I noticed Corey kind of like he's like jumping around almost. And I looked to him and I said, "Hey, shut up! Like, quiet! Like, you're gonna scare it. Like, stop! Shh, be quiet!" And in that 3 or 4 seconds that it took me to turn to tell him to shut up, and then look back, it was gone. Didn't make a noise. Didn't do anything else. It just poked its head from behind the tree, and I think it was more curious as to what we were doing. But it was something that was like, "Oh my God, did that just happen?" You know, because I wasn't expecting it to. And so we kind of just sat there kind of not really knowing what to say after that or what to do. So we just ended up leaving, and I don't really think we talked too much the whole time we were driving back because it took 25 minutes to get home. And got home, and I told my wife, and I said, "This is what happened." And you know, it really kept me awake for a while. And ever since then, that was the spark that kind of lit the fire in me to continue doing it. And do you want me to just keep going on how the podcast started and all that stuff?
Yeah, by all means.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after this sighting happened, that really lit a fire in me. Like, I was more obsessed than I was before, and you know, that's saying something because I can easily drop something. But when the pandemic happened, we kind of, there's 3 of us. We all kind of agreed that, you know, okay, we'll just give it a rest for now. We'll just kind of leave things at, and then we'll pick it up when this is over in a couple of weeks. 3 years later. So, you know, as time kind of went on, I realized, you know, we were kind of doing that. We're going to be in this for the long haul. And I still had this desire to learn more about these creatures and these beings. I got to stop using the word creatures because that's disrespectful, but they're beings. They're entities. They're a whole other level of consciousness that kind of don't understand. But I wanted to learn more. And the only way I could do that was by talking with other people. And, you know, I listen to Sasquatch Chronicles. I listen to Cliff and Bobo. I listen to Dixie Creature, all that stuff. And I thought, well, you know what? That's something I think I can do. You know, but, you know, let's give British Columbia some love. So that's kind of where the podcast began. And so I did it. I bought some cheap equipment. It really shows through on the first 20 episodes or so. It was terrible.
I feel that.
Yeah, it was a learning curve for sure. Yeah. But I did it, and I just kind of put it out there, and I started interviewing my friends who've had encounters. You know, there was a 20-year-old girl I had on my show, and I just started reaching out to the Facebook groups on big about, you know, who wants to come on my show and that sort of thing, and it just kind of snowballed into that. And I did that for 2 years. I'm still doing it, actually. I'm just kind of on pause right now. Mm-hmm. But, you know, there was a talk of having a conference in the interior of British Columbia because there really hadn't been one of note in many, many years, like a long, long time. I mean, they're down and there's some on the island, you know, there's definitely a lot in Washington and Oregon and that sort of thing. But even Alberta has some. But I noticed that we didn't. So I just kind of threw it out there. You know, what would you guys think if we had a get together? And then it just kind of turned into, hey, well, let's do a conference. I'm like, oh, okay. And I really wasn't comprehending the how much work would be going into this thing, but yeah, it's been a learning experience, that's for sure. But here we are today. You know, I decided I want to do this conference. I put it together. I asked some researcher friends of mine to come up and speak, and I'm really, really hoping that this one's successful because I'd love to continue to do more and just, you know, not only have a safe place for people to learn. But, and selfishly, I do want to grow my brand. But I just want to bring people together. It's just, this world is so divided as it is right now. I think it's something that, we can all agree on. I've spoken to, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way. I've spoken to rednecks who are the friendliest people on earth. Or I've talked to a doctor in Florida. I've spoken to, a housewife in California. There's such a wide variety, a group of people that have this one thing in common. They've all seen a Sasquatch. And, I think that could be used as some kind of tool to bring people together to get past some kind of differences, even just for one day, and have everyone be in the same headspace all at once. And then that's where the conference is right now.
That's powerful. I feel like that's a really big step, or a big foot, if you will, forward for creating a very rewarding experience, not just for the Bigfoot community, but for BC. That's huge.
Well, I'm getting messages from people in Alberta actually for this thing. I've got a couple of people from Alberta coming. I've got people from Washington coming. Obviously, British Columbia. I've sold out. Oh, I don't have my notebook in front of me, but we're about 50% sold, and that's a good thing. That's 100 people, and I'm projecting 200. I think at this rate, it's probably going to sell out pretty quickly. So, next year could be bigger and better.
Absolutely. I'm hoping that you completely sell out, that we showcase how big an event like this can be for Bigfoot fans and non-fans alike. That it's something that you can keep doing, because that's going to create a continual rewarding experience, which I think is like the natural evolution of something like your podcast. Yeah.
It's definitely a passion project. Like I don't get paid to do my podcast. I don't make money off of it. It was just something that I wanted to do because I wanted to learn more, and I still do. I don't think I have it all quite figured out, and I don't think anybody really does until these beings are studied, like a Jane Goodall situation, but or something like that. But I do believe that Sasquatch has this ability to bring people together, and so that's where it's at.
Mm-hmm. I think, especially when it comes to looking at things like how Sasquatch can represent honesty. It is the type of people that are truth seekers that are the ones that get the most involved in this kind of thing. It really brings the right people together as well.
I hope so. I really do. I mean, I've seen, I put my promotional poster out there, and I don't know if you guys have seen it or not, but, I very rarely check comments in groups and stuff, but, I put it in a Kamloops lifestyle group. I put it in I think in a Kelowna group where it's not really Sasquatch related, and I went and checked the comments. And of course you have your skeptics or your people who are very cynical towards the whole thing. Oh, you must be a flat earther too. Like, no, Earth is pretty round. I'm sure of it. But that doesn't mean that, because you believe in one thing, that means that you have to believe in something else. It's just, that ignorance is kind of humorous to me.
Mm-hmm. It's healthy to have that kind of thing too, because that gets people talking. I feel like Bigfoot is, to non-believers, like a gateway drug into conspiracy theories. In our show, we focus on Bigfoot, a lot of other cryptids and things like that. But it's all about just keeping an open mind, with Sasquatch primarily being the most real thing that started our show.
Yeah. How long have you guys been doing this show for?
Well, I think we're kind of in a similar boat as you, where listen to Sasquatch Chronicles, listen to a few other shows, and we thought, hey, let's talk about this and create a setting where perhaps other people won't feel necessarily so isolated. If they do experience something, they can listen to other people's encounters. They can listen to more information that is shedding light on this topic, and it might help them have a little bit more peace of mind. And I think we started in 2021, didn't we, Reuben?
We did. And we had this whole line of ideas lined up for different cryptids and stuff. So we kind of started off as almost like a cryptid dictionary, if you will. Because what better way to reach people than to create an expansive topic when we have shows like yours where we have interviews and lots of Bigfoot reports, whereas ours, we can kind of take a step back and go, well, let's do an episode on Bigfoot. Let's talk about some different like possible subtypes of Sasquatch. Let's talk about Dogman. Let's talk about this or that, and see what kind of people listen to the show.
Yeah, I venture a little bit off into the Dogman world, but I'm kind of scared to open that door, because I don't know if I'll be able to close it. So I think Sasquatch is keeping my hands full pretty well as it is right now. So I think I'm just going to stick with that. But I do get people every once. I think I've done 3 or 4 episodes with Dogman and a couple with orbs, and actually I did one with a reptilian man or a lizard man or something like that. That was down in North Carolina, if I remember correctly. But
it's good to have a line that you're willing to cross, but that line is there.
Yeah, those don't do over. I don't get good comments when I venture off the beaten path. those episodes don't produce the numbers that Sasquatch actually does. So I mean that just kind of tells you how popular Sasquatch, the subject of Sasquatch can be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they always do probably maybe 50 to 60% of what Sasquatch numbers do, and I always find it fascinating. I try to keep an open mind. I mean, if one thing I've learned about discussing Sasquatch is that if there's one thing, then why can't there be others? But the Sasquatch community is very fickle, and they're very finicky, and you don't try to sway us in another direction once we're already going that way. So I try not to rock the boat too much. And besides that, I love the subject of Sasquatch. I love talking to people about it. I love hearing people's encounters, whether they be a scary incident or something where people have just accidentally bumped into one or seen them hunting. I love those stories. I just love hearing about these beings who are so they're so beautiful. They really are. And I pray that you guys get to see one day, because it will be something that's burned into your brain and you'll never ever forget it. That's how influential these beings can be. And they don't even really they don't want nothing to do with us. Which is kind of, I think the world could use some Sasquatch love these days, but
It would feel like a validation of sorts almost to see one.
Yeah, well, I didn't up until a couple of months ago, I always had that doubt in my head. Like, did I see what I think I saw? I even talking with my brother and my best friend who were there, I still didn't believe myself. There was still that little morsel of doubt that was kind of sitting in the back of my head. And I did an episode with a lady who was actually from Merritt as well. And I'll be damned if she did not see a Sasquatch in the same place I did. And the way she described it, because I don't really describe, what he looked like too much, but the way she described it, it was like, oh my God, like, holy crap. Like, we might have seen the same one. Like, it was in the same time frame, within a couple of months of each other and in the same area. So it's like, wow, holy crap. So that was very, very validating to me. And I was floating on cloud 9 for the rest of the night after I talked to her, and she just made my night because, that little morsel of doubt, just got little tiny, just became a little tiny thing. But, it's things like that. I'm still learning so much. And for the most part, I don't hear a lot of scary encounters. I think I don't want to, rattle any feathers or anything, but I really don't think scary encounters happen as much as, people make them out to be. I think I've only done less than 5 probably scary episodes where people have been terrified for their life. And for the rest of them, they're basically holy crap moments. So I think a lot of it gets sensationalized, which people tend to do because, they want to make some money, and that's fine. There's just nothing wrong with that. But my path is kind of going in a different direction, and I don't really, I don't see it that way. I don't see them as being terrifying, creatures that should be feared and shot on sight type of thing. No, absolutely not. I think they're more afraid of us than anything else because they can see what we do. I kind of went on a tangent there, but that's kind of
it's all good. That's what we want. That's the whole purpose of this. I think that's great.
I reciprocate a lot with that statement. They don't want anything to do with us. I don't blame them. I would stay far away from people.
Yeah.
There's lots of people that want to stay away from people. So
Yeah, I'm one of them.
Maybe someday we'll have a Bigfoot conference so large that they'll just kind of walk up to the edge and say, hey, we can just walk right in. They'll accept us. It'll finally happen.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would be nice. Someone will still doubt it, though. Someone will still say, that's phony. That's fake.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that quite a bit. Even when talking to, people who aren't even skeptics, they just don't care about the whole subject. And, I tell them about, then they ask. And I never tell my Sasquatch story unless people ask. And that's one thing I come across where is like, no, that didn't happen. That was a bear. No, yeah, you're BSing, whatever. And like, okay, well, so I don't have the energy to try to convince a non-believer or a skeptic, one way or the other. Either you can learn more and maybe change your mind, or you just be a skeptic or a non-believer, but don't kind of tell me what I saw. Like, you explain to me what that was then. You're so positive that I did not see a Sasquatch, then you tell me what that was. It had fingers. Bears don't have fingers.
I imagine there are a lot of encounters that people have where they think that they maybe saw a bear or something running away, or they heard something rustling around and they assume it's a bear. But I bet there's a percentage of that was actually a Sasquatch.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's the flip side of that where I've spoken to people and I'm fairly certain that what they came across was not a Sasquatch. I'm pretty sure they saw bears or something else. But, people's minds can play tricks on them. And that's why I was always kind of hesitant, even with my own encounter, to believe it 100%. Just because, it sounds terrible, but, that I'm still learning so much that I don't even know what to believe. I hear reports of Sasquatch being interdimensional or making themselves invisible, or they're just primates that are walking around the woods these days. And I'm not sure either way. I don't have answers for that. But, all I know is that what I saw changed my life. And that's kind of where, I've taken my focus to, is like what I saw. I'm just using my own experiences with them to move forward.
It really shows the different experiences people have, the different theories of Bigfoot, of how divided, just within our own Bigfoot community, how divided people can be on the subject. And there's a lot of different paths that could take, whether that's maybe we find out that these beings are very deeply spiritual, that they're very interconnected to maybe some other dimension or something like that. And that's a new gateway for science to eventually go down. Or maybe we find out something totally different. That's why I think it's important for all of us to have that open mind for every theory. Because at any point, any one of those theories could turn out to be true.
Yeah. Well, like Wes always says, or Sasquatch Chronicles, Wes Germer, he always says, we won't know until we're studying one. We have one laying on a table and we're studying it, which I hope it never comes to that. And I don't think it will. I really don't. I think that when the day comes that, they're acknowledged as a living, breathing society of beautiful entities, that, it'll be their choice. They will come forward and make themselves known. For whatever reason that is, I don't know. But I don't think it's going to happen the way most people think that it's going to happen, where somebody's going to shoot one and bring it to, a university or, the town square or whatever, and just, here it is. I just don't see it playing out that way. I think they're much smarter than that. But I could be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough.
Everybody
Every time
loves
I see
it.
something on the news for take like Rick Dyer, for instance, saying, oh, there's a body and it's in like a big freezer or something like that. And I immediately kind of retreat when I hear something like that. Versus if somebody came forward with a story saying, oh, this happened and I thought I had a body, but it just went poof, disappeared. I'm at a point now where I'd almost be more willing to believe something that sounds so unbelievable like that, from everything that I've kind of gathered in my hunt for the truth, I guess you could call it. And I'm sure Taylor feels a similar way on some of those theories as well.
Well, it's amazing how the information changes. When I was younger, I believed in Bigfoot, and I used to think it was one being that was roaming around the Pacific Northwest. And as you get older, the information changes. You start to realize, and still people I talk to today, like, oh yeah, they're everywhere. They're all over the place. Like, oh, it's not just one that existed back in the day. No, they're still thriving out there. They're very common, multiple different types out there. And you had the information too of maybe they are interdimensional. They can tap into something that spiritually we can't anymore. The majority of people at least can't. I won't say not everyone can or can't, but yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I'm not sure, because I've had a few experiences with them, beyond my sighting, and I kind of offended people when I talk about it, because I like the way I describe it. It wasn't something that was overstimulating. It was just staring at us. Like it's not an exciting experience. Like it didn't throw rocks or nothing or howl at us or anything. It just stared and looked at us for a few seconds, and then it walked away. So I when we had our sighting, it was enough to change me. But Sasquatch sightings, when other people run into these things, it can be devastating. It can be traumatic. It can be enlightening. I've actually spoken to quite a few people who've their lives have changed, not in the same way mine has, but I mean, they look at things differently. So sightings with Sasquatch and people who have encounters them affects people differently in either a beautiful way or something else. But I don't think people should be in fear of them unless you do something to make them, angry. I'm not even sure where I was going with that. What was the question again?
I was getting so involved there, I was starting to lose thought of my question too.
I have a question to defer to here. So have you encountered a lot of people that just don't want to go back out into the woods at all after experiencing this? Because you mentioned there's a lot of people that have that sometimes that trauma.
I'm trying to think, and I'm pretty sure I've talked to some people, and it was mainly like people down south, like Texas, Alabama, that sort of thing. I spoke to this elderly lady in, I want to say it was Wyoming, but I could be mistaken. I just I forget details. I have it all in my books. But anyway, her encounter was very, very traumatic, even though this Sasquatch really wasn't doing anything to provoke any fear or anything like that. It was just like, you're not supposed to see something that you don't think is supposed to exist. And so she has a real hard time getting back. She was in Oregon, that's where it was. She has a hard time getting back into the woods. She used to run in the woods, take her dogs for runs or walk through the trails and just be in nature. And just, she loved being outdoors. But after this happened, she has the darndest time even stepping foot off her lawn, because she lives right close to a forest. And, once her lawn ends, the forest begins. And she has the darndest time. I haven't spoken to her in a while, but I'm assuming, even up till now, she's still struggling with that. And then that's, that's understandable. I mean, how are you supposed to comfort somebody and say, no, that's okay. How do you do that? You just can't. So all you can do is just listen and sympathize and give a little of encouragement and hopefully, things start going in a better direction for her. But, I do hear about that sort of thing. There was another one I cannot really remember off the top of my head. And I do apologize. I get a lot. And once one episode's done, I kind of move on to the next one. So I try to leave that one where it was. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there has been a few where people have been terrified to go back into the woods. Not as much as you would think. I did speak to one gentleman in Princeton who didn't really affect him all that much. He went back hunting the next day, the same day actually.
Oh wow!
So
I think I'm the type of person.
Yeah, I think it varies from what type of personality that person has, but it affects people differently.
I want to say that I'm the type of person, if I had an encounter, I had an experience, so long as it was I want to call it almost like a soft encounter where you see one looking at you, or maybe you see one drinking out of the river and it walks away, I would quickly go inspect. I'd be like, I want to get like footprints or something. I want to almost like I have something to take home with me. Like take a picture and just get that, like a footprint or some little piece of the environment to take home. Be like, look what I found. I had an encounter, you know? But at the same time, if that experience happens any differently, well, I don't know how I'd react. I guess I'll find out hopefully in the future.
Yeah. Well, I don't mean to burst your bubble, but usually encounters don't happen on your terms. It's always their terms.
Yeah.
It's always unexpected. That's what I've been finding.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's very, very rare. I mean, for someone to go out into the woods and have the exact encounter that they're hoping for. And I mean, I think it has happened before, but I think the Patterson Gimlin footage is a perfect example of that. They were out looking and then they found. So, but people going out, Sasquatch hunting, and I hate using that term because it makes me think that they're trying to shoot them, but don't have your expectations way up here and then be disappointed when that's not met. Sometimes all you get is a howl, or sometimes you get a whoop, or tree knocks in return, or you get chased off a mountain. Who knows?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, has happened to me. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
I can't imagine having
You guys
a chase experience.
Oh,
Yeah, sure.
By all means, yes.
I'm so excited for that.
Well, this was before the sighting. So let me preface this by saying everything that could go wrong that day went wrong. So like I mentioned earlier, me and my two best friends, we're planning on going in this one area that they're very well known. It's actually where my in-laws live. It's a little tiny village, and it's completely surrounded by mountains, and it's just rocky. It's just a beautiful country living, and they're well known to be there. And my father-in-law mentioned to me one day, he's like, yeah, there's a white one and a little juvenile that live up in the mountain behind me. And we're like, oh, okay. Light bulb went off in our heads, and we're like, okay, let's do this. So we picked I believe it was a Saturday in November to go. And just right from the get-go, things weren't happening right. We were supposed to leave at 8 a.m. Or sorry, 7 a.m. Our one best friend wasn't answering his phone. He wasn't returning text. He just wasn't into it. So he didn't even tell us that he wasn't going. And so I messaged my other buddy who was there with the sighting, Dusty, and it's like, well, are you ready? He's like, no, I'm working out. Oh yeah, okay. And so 8 a.m. comes and goes, 9 a.m. comes and goes, 10 a.m. comes and goes, and I messaged Dusty like, hey, well, what's the plan? Are we going or not? He goes, yeah, we're going. I'm just going to load up my side-by-side, and then I'll come pick you up, which he has, those little Rangers, whatever those things are. Like, okay, fine. So he ends up getting protein powder in his eye, and he has to go get it flushed out.
Oh.
I should have seen the writing on the wall at this point. Like, okay, just call it a day. Like, don't even bother. So finally, he gets all done. He has a side-by-side loaded. His eye's all cleaned out and all this stuff. And he comes and picks me up. It's 2:30 in the afternoon. And in November, it starts getting dark at like 5. So, and the place we're going to is an hour and a half drive without any hauling anything. So, but now that he's hauling something, our time is our window of opportunity is very, very tiny. And at this point, I'm just kind of pissy about the whole thing. I'm like, let's just go. Let's get in the truck. Let's go. Because I sat around and wasted the whole Saturday, and I was just kind of being pissy about it. And so we get in there and we drive, and we're kind of cursing at our other friend because he backed out and didn't tell us. And we get to the area, and it's about 4:30-ish. And the area that we go to, there's an old abandoned mine there. And so it has switchbacks, a switchback road that goes all the way to the top. And the plan was we were going to unload the side-by-side and just drive it all the way up. And apparently there's a cave up there that we're going to go check out. So we get there, park the truck, start on. We get our gear out of the back, and Dusty goes to or I was actually going to unstrap the side by side. He's grabbing his pockets and he's doing this. I'm like, oh no, he forgot the keys.
Oh no.
I'm like, oh my God. And even then the warning signs weren't, I wasn't registering, that warning sign that was going off in my head saying turn around. And so I'm like, you know what? We drove up here. Let's just walk. We'll go to the first clearing that's up, because there's a clearing after the first switchback. Once you go up, it's a 10, 15-minute walk at the most. Okay, so we walked. Dusty grabbed his rifle because, there's other things to worry about in that area. There's cougars and actually wolves. And we started walking up. We get to the first switchback. And this was very, very weird because there is a big boulder. I mean, it's the size of a Volkswagen Beetle right in the middle of the road. And it wasn't there the last time we were there. Like, this was our second time in this area. I'm like, well, who put this here? Like, you can't get machinery up here because the road's starting to slough off and, it's not very stable unless you're in like a 4x4 or a quad or a dirt bike or something. Mm-hmm. And, well, how did this get here? It didn't roll down here because you'd see where it was, right? Like, you could tell. And then we're like, well, that's really weird. Oh, well, okay, let's just keep going. So we started walking up past that rock, and we get to this clearing, and we always carried a bat with us, like a one of those little kid bats, little wooden things for tree knocks. And so I said, it was starting to get dark, and the sun was just getting behind the mountain, and it was starting to get dark. It was dusk. And I said, okay, well, we drove all this way. I'm doing a tree knock. So I walked about 20 feet away from Dust, and he stayed on the little road there that's the earth is starting to take back. And I walk over there and I do a couple of tree knocks, and I'm sitting there and I'm listening, and all I can hear is psst, hey, psst, hey. I'm like, turn around, and it's Dust. He's like panicking. He's like, come here. I'm like, just like, and I'm like, because I'm miserable at this point now. I'm like, relax, man. Like give me a minute. Like, we've wasted our whole day. Just give me a minute. Like, leave me alone. So I did a couple of tree knocks, and I'm standing there, and my back is toward Dusty's behind me. And I'm standing there and listening again, nothing. And then all of a sudden, get over here. Get over here. Hey, get over here. I'm like, what? All right, fine. Let's just go home. So I turn around and I walk back to him. I'm like, what? Like, well, what's the matter? Did you not? And he swore. And he's like, effing hear that? I'm like, hear what? Like, what? And he goes, there's something walking over there. And there's a really heavy tree line there. And I'm like, I didn't hear anything, man. Let's just go. Like, you're being paranoid. So we started walking back down, and all of a sudden I could, and goosebumps. This, whatever, it started paralleling us, staying in the tree line to not be seen, but it was following us down. We'd stop, it would stop. And you could, we started walking down, and then I heard it. So I kind of messaged, or I just kind of tapped Dust. I'm like, hey, I can hear that. He goes, let's go. Like, he's panicking. Like, he's keeping his cool, but he's freaking out inside. And we started walking again, and then all of a sudden I heard this, like, this really deep growling thing, and it reverberated through my body that I cannot explain to you how that felt. I felt that go through my body. Mm-hmm. And from that second on, it was just from the top of my head to the tip of my toes to the tips of my fingers, it was just complete fear. It was complete fear that overtook my body, and I started shaking. And I said, Dust, we have to go now. So we started speed walking. If there was one thing that we really kind of were good at, it was, not running, because when you run, you become prey. Even if it wasn't a Sasquatch, the cougar will see you as a nice, challenging meal.
Absolutely.
So we were speed walking down, and Dusty's trying to make small talk to kind of ease the tension, because we had another 10-minute walk to go, and this thing was maybe 25 feet away from us. And I'm like, shut up, Dust, shut up, because I'm trying to listen. I'm trying to hear if it's coming at me. I don't want like some big hairy hands grabbing me by the shoulders and dragging me back in the woods. Like, I want to be able to have a fighting chance if I have to. And then I remember Dusty had a gun, so I switched to the other side. But the whole time we're walking, you can hear this thing walk with us. And we would slow down, it would slow down. And I heard in my head, now this is going to sound very weird, but in my head, I heard, you need to leave, and you don't turn around. You don't want to look at me. And that was a voice in my head. I don't know where that came from. I don't know what that was. It could have just been me manifesting something that I really wasn't, my brain was kind of maybe trying to protect myself. But it was a different voice than mine. And so I didn't tell Dusty about that at first and when we're walking down. And so we get down to the switchback where the boulder was. And I thought, okay, we're good now. I think this thing's going to leave us alone. And we started walking back down. It's another 5-ish minutes to the truck. And Dusty pulled his keys out and he's hitting the button to see how close we are, because it was getting pretty dark at this point. And the truck lights weren't coming on. I'm like, oh my God, this is taking forever. Come on, we got to get to the truck. And lo and behold, it crossed the road and started trailing us on, or paralleling us on this side now. And it was the longest 5-minute walk I've ever had in my life. And like, I'm shaking, like I'm literally drenched in sweat. And it was very difficult for me to even speak because my mouth was very dry. Dry mouth, and I was shaking. And we get about 20 feet before the truck, and it stopped. And we just kept going. And that's when I kind of knew we were going to be in the clear at that point, because whatever we did to piss it off, it kind of left us there. But I still didn't get it. I was still kind of panicking a little bit. So I'm trying to grab the door handle, and my hand was shaking so much it was hard for me to grip it. Mind you, I'm like literally wet. I'm soaking wet from sweat, and I couldn't grab the door handle. I couldn't get enough power in my hand to grab it and open it. And Dusty had to come around and open the truck for me, and that's how I got in. And I just jumped in. I closed the door and I said, go. So the area that we're at, there's one of those gates, and the gate was closed. Oh, great. Somebody closed the gate. And so we stopped, and he's like, okay, get out and open the gate. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Drive through it. I'm not getting out. Drive through the gate. I'm not getting out of this truck again. So he got out and opened the gate and moved the truck forward and closed the gate. We started going down the highway, and he notices both of his actually, his straps are flapping in the wind. So he had to pull over, and I'm like, oh my God, let's not stop. And he says, no, I have to, man. And like they're loose. So he gets out, and something loosened those damn straps. I don't know if somebody else was there. I don't know what the heck happened there, but they were tight when we left the truck. Mm-hmm. And so we got home, and we did not talk at all. We just sat in silence. He dropped me off. I said, see you later. And he went home. And I went home, and I hugged my wife, and I told her what happened. And I was literally still like in a weird place. Like I was zoned out. And so, I didn't sleep for 2 days after that. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced in my life. And it was something that I'll never forget. But I talked to my father-in-law a couple of days later about it. And apparently, for many, 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 many years, there's always been this understanding that mountain is theirs at night. Nobody's supposed to go up there at night. That's theirs at night. And we were there at night, just at the cusp of dusk, but, I don't think it really mattered. So my father-in-law told me, like, yeah, you really shouldn't have been there. Like he did not like that. Like he's, and apparently now after that happened, the Sasquatch that live in that area started harassing the village, like stealing apples and like making the dogs go wild and whatever else. So we went up back there 2 weeks later, and we didn't go all the way back up. We just went to where the truck was parked, and we left some fruit and vegetables and kind of just said, hey, we're sorry. We didn't know, we weren't here to do any harm. We'll leave you alone now. And that's where that that's where that left off, and we haven't been back there since. But that was
That's
kind of
terrifying.
my experience with him. It was at the time, upon having time to reflect and think about it. I would have done the same thing. I mean, if, like, for example, if one of you broke into my house at night when I'm sleeping or whatever else, I'm going to chase you out. So
We wouldn't do that for the record.
but you understand what I mean, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
it's a reaction, and that kind of made me think. They're a lot more like us than we realize. They're protective. From what I understand, the white one, he's an old guy, and the juvenile that's with him is learning, the ways of the forest and everything else. That's from what I understand. I can't confirm that, but that's what the locals say.
Mhm.
And so, he's protecting his kin or whatever he is to him. I'm not sure, but that's a totally normal reaction to have. So, it as scary as that was, and as much as I had to learn a lesson the hard way, it was something that also made me kind of think, well, all right, they're a lot similar to us than we give them credit for, because that's how I would have reacted too.
It was interesting to me too when you brought up the possibility for mind speak partway through there, where you felt like you heard that voice in your mind telling you to leave. That right there is such a powerful moment in a lot of reports that we hear. And I think that really shows how different they are, how important they are as well.
Yeah. Well, I've had a few people come on on my show that have had experience with mind speak. And actually had one lady that didn't come on the show, and she had an amazing case of mind speak where, hopefully she'll forgive me if she sees this. Don't get mad. But she mentioned that, she was out kayaking by herself in an area that's not too far from here. And there was a juvenile throwing rocks at her. Well, from up top of a cliff. And she could hear a voice in her head because she looked up and seen this thing. And she could hear a voice in her head apologizing to her, saying, "I am sorry, my young one doesn't know any better. Please forgive him." And she looked up, and there was a mother Sasquatch grabbing it and dragging it away. So, they're a lot. They're fascinating. They're amazing, amazing, beautiful beings. And, I would love to spend a day with them if I could ever do that one day.
Mhm.
But I know that's not going to happen. But, it just, I want to see their social structures. I want to see that they mother and father, brothers and sisters, they have family units. I assume they do, obviously, because their population is still fine. But how much alike are we and how different are we is kind of what I want to know.
I feel like that's something that we won't find out until our own little Bigfoot community really comes together and expands and shows the world that this stigma against Bigfoot stories and encounters needs to go.
Yeah.
Only then, kind of like you were mentioning earlier, do you think that being like Sasquatch would be able to really introduce itself properly?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was in that boat too. Like, when I started the podcast, I was in that boat. I was assuming that all I was going to hear were scary encounters and people were going to be terrified and that sort of thing. And if you talked about mind speak or the woo factor, I was pointing my finger at people and saying you're nuts. But over the course of the couple of years that I've been doing the show, I've learned so much. Like people don't have to come in with facts, but when one person mentions something, and then another person mentions something, and another person mentions something, and they're all the same thing, but they're coming from different parts of the country or different parts of the province or whatever else. There's got to be something to that. So you know what I mean? Like, I've done a few episodes with people seeing them crawling on all fours. I've never seen that, but I'd love to, by the way. But there's got to be something to that then. Is that the primate in them coming out? And if so, if they're a primate, what do their bone structure look like? These are just questions that I'm that float around my head all day, and now I'm going to be thinking about this all night. I'm going to watch a video later about it.
I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight after thinking about that. Oh, just that mental imagery is actually probably terrifying for me.
Watch them crawl on all fours.
Just that concept of something skittering around is something you see in a lot of like horror movies and stuff.
Yeah.
So now to link that to Sasquatch.
Well, from what I understand, like they can dislocate or somehow manipulate, they contort their hips so that they're almost like a spider. It's a really, I want to see it just for that reason alone, but I doubt I ever will. But it's something that we can't do. We used to be able to, way back when we were cavemen and all that thing. But at what point did we venture off into a different path from them and our evolutionary,
It's interesting to bring up.
Yeah.
The dislocation there and the popping is actually something associated with the Dogman topic, where you can hear that pop and they dislocate when they go up and down from being bipedal to quadrupedal.
Yeah, you know what? I'll have to look it up, but I remember that's what the gentleman was saying. He was in the Lillooet area, I believe, when he saw this back in like the 60s. But yeah, he said it just kind of almost transformed. Like, you know what I mean? It just that thought is kind of creepy to me, but that's just probably just because I think that's weird looking.
I think from the research I remember doing on this topic is that it's actually part of the popping sound isn't so much like the hips, but it's also the rib cage expanding for being able to absorb more air when you're in a two-legged form, I guess I could call it, versus being quadrupedal, where it can condense more to give you that more room for like everything else to expand.
Ah, okay, that would make sense. It's still kind of creepy, but yeah, that makes sense.
It is very creepy.
But you see, that's why I can't open that door to Dogmen, and if I do, it's just going to lead to something. I'm a very obsessive person, and I have to monitor this thing. Like I also collect I collect Transformers. You guys remember those toys from the 80s and 90s?
I was just thinking of Transformers when I said forms there.
Yeah. And so like if I'm easily obsessed about something, and so I have to really monitor what I become obsessed about. If there's something happening that's like, okay, I don't have time to dedicate to this, so I'm sorry, but I gotta cut you out. I do. So like, Dogman is one of them. Like buying more toys than I need to is another. But it just, there's a lot of things out there that we just don't know what they are. I mean, the Ogopogo, for instance, that picture that popped up a couple months ago, that looks like a giraffe swimming underwater. But
yeah,
and I want to study that subject. I have friends in Kelowna. Like, you guys are located in Kelowna, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're very close there.
Yeah, I have friends in Kelowna, and I want to go hang out there. And let's take your boat out. Let's go see if we can find it. And it's like that's how easy obsessed I am. And maybe that's a helpful thing for me when it comes to learning about these beings, because I'm obsessed with them. I'm absolutely obsessed with them. Like, you should see, I have artwork in my office there that, I've just been collecting. I have a stack of books everywhere. Now that I've got this conference going, I've got my conversations have been completely taken over by Sasquatch, and I have a lot of my really good friends that I have nowadays are from Sasquatch. They've given me so much without them even trying. That the least I can do is try to educate others about them as much as I can, because I'm not an expert, and I never claim to be.
Yeah, I think that honestly leads right back into the conference topic. The Nicola Valley Bigfoot Conference being this big thing is a chance to give back to the community in a way as well. Yeah.
Well, I was telling my wife, like, I don't know how I got into this. like I mentioned earlier, I really wasn't expecting it to be, at the scale that it's at. I'm putting it out there. I'm hoping for. I was hoping for 200, people to show up, and we're very easily going to meet that goal. And that's already got me going. Is maybe next year make it bigger, but this year, I'm just kind of hoping it goes as smooth as it possibly can, considering I really have never done anything like this before. I'm leaning a lot on my friends to come up and give me a hand and showing me who've had conference experience, showing me what to do and how things should be run and that sort of thing. But it's definitely a learning experience, and it eats a lot of time. But you know what? Once May 13th, finishes, and then upon reflection, I'm pretty sure everyone will have enjoy themselves that show up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Taylor, I'll pass it off to you for a minute here. It's going to take some more sips of my drink, and I'm sure we're going to bring up the conference some more, maybe throw in some plugs.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, the doors open at 8 a.m. on May 13th, correct?
8 a.m., yes. Then the show will begin around, well, I shouldn't say the show. The conference will begin around 9:30. 8 a.m. is more for the vendors to come in and set up their tables and, kind of, beforehand meet and greet sort of thing, and just kind of working out the last minute bugs and that sort of thing before we actually get the conference going. I do have one lady coming up who I'm really, really excited to have up here. I don't know if you guys have listened to one of my episodes. Her name is Judy Carroll, and she's coming from Port Angeles. And she's going to give a lecture on how to speak with Sasquatch. And now I had her on my show, and I know that sounds way out there. And believe me, when I reached out to her to have her as a guest on my show, I was kind of hesitant about it because, that's something that's, that fuels a stigma. And after speaking with her, though, I'm all on board. If she can do this, I'm all for it. Also, I have Blaine McMillan coming. He's an author and a researcher. I have Jason Zackerson coming. I have Alex Solinak coming. And Leon Thompson. I don't know if you guys know who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Bigfoot Okanagan. Yeah, he's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's myself. And then we also have Thomas Steenberg. He's coming, but he's not going to be presenting this year. There's a little mix up with the scheduling, and so it didn't quite work out that we're going to be able to get him as a guest, but he's going to come up for the day and just kind of hang out and talk with people and that sort of thing. But I'm sure we can probably convince him to come on up and take some questions or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
sure Taylor and I will pop by to take a peek at things as well.
I got my tickets. Yeah, I'm there. I'm bringing my wife with me. She's excited. So, Steenberg, that's super, super cool because when I went to Harrison Hot Springs, they have that small Sasquatch museum there. And it was cool to see all the books and all the contributions from Thompson and Steenberg. And it was just really nice to be in that kind of environment. But it is just so unfortunate that it's just so small scale. And so that's another thing too, going to this conference, having it so blown up and interacting with all these people. That's so fantastic.
Yeah, I hope so. If anybody takes anything away from this other than the fact, my reasoning for the conference, which was, people have a safe place to talk about it. But the other thing I want people to take away from is they're having a good time. They're going to make contacts, they're going to talk to other people, and they're going to have friends. They're going to make friends from this whole thing. And that's what's exciting to me. I have some really, really good friends that I've met through the Bigfoot community. And, it's so, I just kind of want to pass that on too. You know what I mean? I mean, there's so many, like, one of my better friends is a lady who's in her late 60s. And we can just talk for hours about not only Sasquatch, but other things in life in general. If I have an issue, she's like a mother figure to me at this point. And it's so weird that, 2 years ago, I had no idea who she was. But because we have a common interest in Sasquatch, we've become very, very close. And it's awesome. I love it. And I hope people really take that with them when they come.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. Well, I think we're nearing the end of our episode here. Was there anything else you wanted to shout out? You want to drop some plugs to your show?
Yeah. Well, if people want to listen to my catalog of podcasts, it's Nicola Valley Bigfoot Podcast. It's found wherever you find podcasts. Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. I just got on actually. Just Google it and it pops up. In terms of the conference, you can reach me at SQUEWEZANCE@gmail.com if for ticket and vendor inquiries. Like I mentioned, that we're halfway sold out already, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be sold out by the day of the event. So I would recommend people reach out to me and pre-order tickets to the event just to make sure that you're be able to get in, because I would really hate to have the day of the event come and there's just not enough. We just have to turn people away. That would really break my heart, but we'll deal with that if that comes. But if people want to get in touch with me, squewezance@gmail.com, SQUEWEZANCE.
Brilliant.
For all our folks listening to the show, anyone local, we hope you attend the conference. To see you there. Beyond that, Taylor, I'll let you put in our plugs and then we'll say our goodbyes here.
Yeah, thank you, Reuben. So you can find us at CryptidClues.ca, Patreon, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Send us an email, CryptidClues@gmail.com. But yeah, until next time, stay safe and take care.
Bye-bye.